Brahmana and Vaishnava. The conclusive comparison between Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Saraswati Thakur. Translated by Bhumipati Das. Continuation 22. Moreover, even if one gets freedom from material existence by giving up the regulated and unregulated association of women, he is still not completely delivered. He may still be bound by the non-devotional behavior of Dharma, Artha, and Kama, which are simply three other forms of Stri Sangha. Moksha, though not a form of Stri Sangha, is nevertheless a relative accomplishment, being simply the absence of material conceptions. Therefore, the constant favorable cultivation of Krishna consciousness has been established as the principal item amongst the Vaishnava codes of behavior for removing the illusions of the non-devotees. Those who desire liberation are also non-devotees. Such persons reject varnashram principles, engage in self-worship, and falsely claim to be Paramahamsas. Therefore, they cannot be Vaishnavas. If one realizes the transcendental position of the Harijans and serves them, then he can also become a Harijan. If one wants to ascertain the process for achieving devotional service through material knowledge, his endeavor will simply be another form of karma. If one wants to ascertain the process for achieving devotional service through impersonal speculation, his endeavor will be dominated by the process of jnana. And if one simply wants to immediately enjoy sense gratification, without considering its good and bad effects, his endeavor will simply be another form of sense gratification. There is no possibility for these three types of persons to achieve devotional service, which is the eternal spiritual propensity of the Harijans. The term non-devotees refers to these three types of persons. Jarasandha, Kamsa, Shishupal, and others are also among the non-devotee aspirants of liberation, averse to Krishna. The enlightenment of the path of Jnana is considered most powerful by the karmis, who are attached to religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. But since it is an obstacle to the cooling moonshine of devotional service, it is not regarded highly by the unalloyed devotees who have already achieved knowledge and supreme auspiciousness. When the non-devotees who are averse to devotional service see the prohibited sinful activities of the pseudo-devotees, they become eager to treat them with their own medicine. But real devotees or Harijans are not affected by such diseases. If a non-duplicitous, aspiring Harijan is anyway infected by the influence of either of these three categories, then Lord Krishna himself protects him. The Srimad Bhagavatam 11.20, 27-30 states as follows. The Supreme Lord said, translation, one who develops faith in my names, qualities, and pastimes, who has given up attachment for worldly and Vedic activities and their fruits, who has understood material sense gratification as the source of misery, yet is unable to give it up, such a faithful devotee has firm conviction that all his necessities will be attained simply by the execution of devotional service. So, he goes on enjoying the sense gratification that he knows will lead to misery, while condemning this sense enjoyment and worshiping me with pure love. In this way, an introspective person constantly engages in my devotional service as I have described it, and I take residence in his heart and personally vanquish the contamination of lust. If one installs me in his heart, faults can no longer remain there. The knots in his heart are untied, his doubts are removed, and his desires for fruitive activities are eradicated. End translation. The conditioned souls who are attached to and maddened by material sense enjoyment proudly consider themselves the doers and thus become bound in the manifold network of karma. When such people come to understand that the results of their karma are insignificant, then only do they begin to give up their attempt to lord it over material nature and develop faith in the topics of the Supreme Lord. When one develops faith in the topics of Lord Hari, he can give up self-identification as the doer and his desire to lord it over. He then understands that all forms of material sense gratification are simply impediments on the path towards his goal of life. Yet, even after understanding this, he is unable to give up his long-standing inclination for sense gratification due to bad habits and weak faith. If one who is situated in such an unfortunate state desires to increase his faith in the topics of Hari and serve him with strong attachment, then the firm conviction that, quote, if I consider myself the doer, I will simply meet with miseries in this world, end quote, will to a great extent protect one from material attachment. If one takes shelter at the lotus feet of a spiritual master and engages in the exclusive service of the Lord, following in the footsteps of the Mahajans, then the transcendental, absolute truth will capture his heart, and all desires other than to serve Krishna will be vanquished. At that time, the contamination produced from lust that has accumulated from many lifetimes will be evacuated. He then no longer has any doubt. In other words, he understands that the path of devotional service is sublime. At that time, he also understands the uselessness of considering himself the doer. When this self-identification as the doer with the aim of sense gratification becomes diminished, at that time he displays symptoms of full surrender, such as all his activities are dedicated to satisfying the Supreme Lord. All his endeavors are directed towards pleasing Krishna, and he considers Krishna is my only protector. Cherished by the Paramahamsas, the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.33 states. Translation. Lord Brahma said, O Madhava, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord of the Goddess of Fortune, Harijans, completely in love with you, do not fall like the seekers of other goals, the karmis and the relatively superior jnanis, fall from their respective unsteady paths. O my Lord, the Harijans are always protected by you, and thus fearlessly traverse over the head of the commander-in-chief of those who create obstacles. End translation. The devotees of the Lord do not remain in a dangerous situation. Rather, they continue to serve Hari with transcendental realization. But if they happen to lack transcendental realization, the Lord gives them knowledge so that they can understand themselves as Harijans. Needless to say, unregulated sense enjoyers, karmis and jnanis, are all desirous of physical and non-physical enjoyment, so there is no possibility of their achieving auspiciousness. But if they give up their respective material desires, they can become devoted Harijans. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.18.12 it is stated, "There is no need for a devotee to separately endeavor for acquiring artificial saintly qualities, like those with concepts other than devotional service who are haunted by the ghosts of karma and jnana. If one is on the platform of devotional service, then all saintly qualities automatically manifest in him." Sri Prahlad Maharaj said, quote, "Those who have unmotivated devotion for the personality of Godhead always possess all good qualities. They are perfectly established in these good qualities. Such exalted qualities, however, can never remain in anyone who is not a Harijan. Because the unregulated sense enjoyers, karmis and jnanis, desire something other than the Supreme Lord, and thus their minds are attracted to changeable products of illusion and external objects of sense gratification, their absorption in various changing, ephemeral objects is only momentary. Thus, the great qualities of saintly persons cannot find a place in their hearts permanently or for any duration of time." End quote. Today, we may see some good qualities in something and consider it excellent. But over the course of time, that excellence does not remain constant, being differently seen in the eyes of different viewers from different points of view at different times. Harijans, however, are eternal, and their activities are eternal. All the perceived and perceiving beings of Vaikuntha, moreover, are adorned with the transcendental qualities of being eternal, faultless, unlimited, and absolutely desirable. Pure, unalloyed Vaishnavas are actually very rare. Those who can say, quote, "Such ideal Vaishnava character is most desirable," end quote, are also seldom found in the world. Therefore, the only means of achieving the highest goal of life is to simply hear and chant the topics of Hari and the Harijans. If for even a moment anyone, whether qualified or unqualified, down to the lowest sinner, factually recognizes that the saintly Harijans are the topmost entities in the 14 worlds and beyond, and that they are therefore most respectable, then their respective spiritual practices will certainly increase our festive joy. The number of such qualified devotees is such a small fraction of the world's population. Therefore, it is most important that the supreme ideal position of the Harijans should be somewhat realized in the heart of every living entity. The wicked tendency of dedicated Prakritijans is to completely reject the worship of Hari. It is stated in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 19, as follows. Translation. The unlimited living entities can be divided into two divisions, those that can move and those that cannot move. Among living entities that can move, there are birds, aquatics, and animals. Although the living entities known as human beings are very small in quantity, that division may be still further subdivided, for there are many uncultured human beings like lechas, pulindas, bodhas, and sabaras. Among human beings, those who are followers of the Vedic principles are considered civilized. Among these, almost half simply give lip service while committing all kinds of sinful activities against these principles. Such people do not care for the regulative principles. Among the followers of Vedic knowledge, most are following the process of fruitive activity and distinguishing between good and bad work. Out of many such sincere fruitive actors, there may be one who is actually wise. Out of many millions of such wise men, one may actually become liberated, mukta. And out of many millions of such liberated persons, a pure devotee of Lord Krishna is very difficult to find. Because a devotee of Lord Krishna is desireless, he is peaceful. Fruitive workers desire material enjoyment, jnanis desire liberation, and yogis desire material opulence. Therefore, they are all lusty and cannot be peaceful. End translation.